Welcome to the sleepy hours, a quiet space where dreams begin and worries fade.
Some places cannot be found. They find you when the rain is just right and your heart is just quiet enough to listen. On some nights, when the sky hangs low and the rain falls with a softness that seems to hush the world, a light flickers in an alley no one remembers passing before. It glows amber through the mist, a golden breath on cobblestones, slick with memory. The city sleeps under its damp curtain, but if you look closely, if you listen between the raindrops, you might hear it, the hush of a door opening where no door should be. The umbrella café does not appear on maps. It is not found by those who search with dry feet and hurried hearts. It is found by those caught in the hush between thoughts, the ones who stop beneath a street lamp and feel the world tilt slightly in the rain. Inside, there is tea steeping in porcelain cups, music that hums like a memory you can't quite place, and strangers whose voices feel like dreams. Some say the cafe listens, that it calls to those who need to remember something they've forgotten or meet someone they haven't met yet but already miss. It never looks the same twice. Sometimes the tables are round, sometimes square, sometimes the walls are deep violet, sometimes forest green. But always, always, it is warm. Always, there is music. And always, someone is waiting. No one knows where it came from or where it goes when the clouds clear. But if you ever find yourself walking alone in the rain, umbrella tilted just so, heart a little too quiet for the world outside, look for the light in the alley that wasn't there yesterday. Tonight we'll begin. Breathe in slowly, as if the rain itself could fill your lungs with calm. Let the sound of the falling droplets soften the edges of the day. Inhale through your nose, gently, and feel your shoulders rise with that quiet breath. Now exhale, slow and complete, letting go of whatever tension lingers in your chest or behind your eyes. With each breath, imagine the mist around you growing thicker, softer, like a silken blanket drawing over your senses. Let your eyelids grow heavier, your jaw loosen, and your hands unclench as the rhythm of the rain becomes the rhythm of your own slowing heartbeat. Begin to notice your body, gently and without judgment. Start at the crown of your head. Imagine a gentle warmth spreading across your scalp like soft candlelight, washing away thoughts and noise. Let it drift down over your forehead, smoothing any creases, softening your eyes. Feel it roll over your cheeks and jaw, relaxing your mouth, loosening your tongue, quieting the words that are no longer needed. Your neck releases its grip. Your shoulders fall just a little lower, heavy and loose. That warmth moves down your arms, elbows, wrists, and into your hands. Your fingers may twitch, but soon they, too, are still. The sensation now gathers at your chest, warm and safe. Your breath is slow and deep, and with each exhale you melt deeper into the quiet. Your heartbeat is soft, steady, like the sound of rain on a distant rooftop. The warmth slides down your back, releasing your spine from the day, and sinks into your stomach, gentle and undemanding. Your hips rest. Your legs are quiet now. The warmth flows through your thighs, your knees, your calves. Finally, it reaches your ankles, your feet, and all 10 toes. Your whole body is calm, like earth after rain. You are safe here. You are warm and dry, even as the rain whispers outside. The sound of water tapping softly on the window is like a lullaby, familiar and far away. The world outside continues, without you for now. You are held in stillness, suspended between waking and dreaming. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you must fix or carry. The only task now is to rest and to listen. Let the café settle. Around you, hear the low murmur of music from an old gramophone in the corner. Smell the faint curl of tea leaves and candle wax. Somewhere, a clock ticks gently. Everything here invites quiet. You are in no hurry. The door behind you has closed. The rain is kept at bay, and the seat beneath you is just the right softness. You've entered a place not quite of this world, but not far from it either. Feel how your breath continues to slow. Feel how the muscles of your body have softened. Let yourself drift, if only slightly, as the night deepens. Let the sound of the café and the rhythm of the rain lull you. There is more to come, but you don't need to reach for it. It will find you. For now, stay here, breathing in stillness and breathing out the last of the day. The story is waiting, just beyond the steam rising from your cup. Mira walked each evening without direction, a gentle habit formed over the years. She didn't think of them as walks, really more like a pause, a space between things. After the emails were answered and the dishes washed, after the noise of the day had thinned to a hush, she would take her green umbrella from the hook by the door and step into the streets. The city changed under rain. Storefronts grew shy behind fogged glass. Streetlights shimmered in puddles like stars caught low to the ground. Mira liked the way sound softened, how footsteps seemed to echo less, and how the night felt larger, deeper. She rarely saw the same things twice. That was part of the quiet magic. One evening, it might be the scent of fresh bread drifting from a bakery she'd never noticed. Another night, a cat would follow her for a block and then disappear. Her walks weren't about discovery or distance. They were about being small and still in a world that often asked for too much noise. Mira moved slowly, sometimes pausing to watch the rivulets of rain dance down a bus stop shelter, or to listen to the way tires hissed on wet pavement. Her umbrella, always the same soft green, was her only companion, shading her not only from the weather, but from the urgency of things. She lived alone, but not unhappily. Her apartment was filled with books and soft lighting and a kettle that clicked gently when the water was ready. There were plants on the windowsill that leaned toward the rain. Music played low in the background most nights, some blend of piano and cello that folded into the walls. Mira had friends, good ones, but she preferred to keep her evenings for herself. There was something about walking through rain-soaked streets that let her loosen her grip on the world. She didn't mind being unseen. In fact, she cherished it. It gave her space to wonder, to drift, to remember things without speaking them aloud. Still, there was a quiet curiosity in her, one that stirred now and then like a wind inside closed windows, a feeling that something waited just beyond the edge of routine. She didn't know what it was, only that it made her linger sometimes at intersections, looking down alleys she had never turned into. She felt it most on nights like this, when the rain fell gently and the city seemed to shift ever so slightly beneath her feet. She always wondered what lay beyond the corners she never took, what door might appear if she were just a little more lost. Tonight, something was different. The rain had a hush to it, thicker somehow, wrapping the street in a muffled cocoon of gray and gold. Mira turned onto a narrow block she'd passed 100 times, the kind with brick walls pressed close and old fire escapes etched against the sky. But now, between two buildings where there had always been nothing but a blank alleyway, there was a door. It wasn't loud about its arrival. There was no flash, no sudden shift of light. It simply was old, wooden, with a painted sign swinging gently above it that hadn't been there before. The Umbrella Café, it read, in soft lettering that shimmered faintly in the rain. Mira stopped. Her umbrella tilted slightly as she blinked through the mist. The door looked aged, the kind that had weathered hundreds of rains, yet the steps leading up to it were perfectly dry. A golden light spilled from the windows, warm and flickering, and for a moment she thought she heard music's soft piano, distant and sweet. Her hand hovered near the doorknob. She wasn't in the habit of entering mysterious buildings that appeared out of nowhere, but the moment didn't feel strange. It felt inevitable, as if this was the next step in a story that had long been waiting to unfold. The rain softened behind her, fading into a hush that matched her breath. She looked back once down the street, empty, silent, glowing with reflections, then turned back to the door. She didn't knock. She didn't need to. As her fingers touched the knob, it turned easily, warmly, as though it had been waiting just for her. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her with the sound of a sigh. The warmth was immediate, wrapping around Mira like a wool blanket pulled from an old cedar chest. Her coat, damp with rain, no longer clung coldly to her arms. The scent of cinnamon, steeped tea, and something deeper, perhaps sandalwood, floated through the air. The umbrella cafe was small but rich with detail. Wooden beams crossed the ceiling like outstretched limbs of a forest, and the walls were lined with mismatched bookshelves, teacups, and framed photographs that looked slightly blurred, as if the people inside them were caught mid-thought. A golden glow came from glass lanterns on each table, their flames swaying. Slightly, though, there was no wind. A record played in the corner, not loudly, but clearly an old piano jazz tune that sounded both melancholy and warm. Rain tapped softly at the wide front windows, creating a rhythm that merged seamlessly with the music. The cafe was half full, but no one looked up. A woman near the window stirred her tea slowly, her eyes fixed on the fog outside. An older man in a wool coat turned the pages of a large book, as if each word required a breath. Then there was the host. He stood behind the counter, tall and narrow, with silver-streaked hair tied at the nape of his neck. He wore a brown vest and no shoes. His eyes met hers as she stepped forward, not with surprise, but recognition, as though he'd known she was coming, as though he knew her name before she spoke it. "Welcome," he said, his voice a smooth hush. "You're just in time." "For what?" she asked, without thinking. He smiled softly. "For whatever you need." He handed her a menu, though there were no prices listed, only poetic descriptions of drinks like Vanishing Rose and Fog Soap. "Chamomile?" Mira pointed to one that read, "For memories best recalled by scent." The host nodded and turned away, beginning to prepare her tea with quiet hands. She took a seat by the fire. The chair was velvet, a muted green that matched the umbrella resting. Beside her, a low table held a single candle and a small brass bell. She didn't ring it. Instead, she watched the room. A child sat in a booth near the back, sketching something with charcoal on thick paper. His mother, perhaps, sat beside him reading. though she wore a dress that shimmered oddly with the light, like the surface of a lake at dawn. The host returned, placing a delicate porcelain cup in front of her. "Chamomile," he said, with a touch of starflower. She wrapped her hands around the cup. It was perfectly warm. She inhaled deeply and froze. The scent was unmistakable, sweet, herbal, with the faintest hint of vanilla and clove. It was her grandmother's tea, exactly the way she had made it on rainy afternoons long ago, before Mira understood how much she would miss it. The first sip was a memory, not a flash or a vision, just the feeling of being 7 years old again, with a lap blanket and soft socks, listening to rain fall outside a window just like this one. Mira didn't speak. She just closed her eyes and let the warmth settle into her bones. Time, in that moment, became something gentle and fluid, and somewhere in the air, the music shifted, as though responding to her memory. The tea had barely cooled, but Mira felt it warm her from the inside, as if the memory had slipped down with each sip. It wasn't just the flavor, it was the weight of the cup, the delicate chip near the rim, even the quiet way the steam curled, like breath on a cold window pane. Across from her, the fire crackled softly, casting shadows that swayed gently across the wooden floor. She watched them, eyes half-lidded, the rhythm of the café around her growing slower, dreamlike. The music shifted again, now a soft jazz tune that made her heart pause. It was a melody she hadn't heard in years, not since the small living room of her childhood, where her father used to play records on Sunday mornings while making breakfast. Mira remembered the sound of the needle scratching, the way the music would fill the whole apartment, making it feel less empty. She didn't think anyone else would remember that song. Yet here it was, floating through the café like it had been summoned just for her. She looked toward the counter. The host met her gaze and gave a small, knowing nod. He wasn't busy. He stood with his hands clasped in front of him, as if merely keeping company with the air. His presence was comforting, quiet. Mira turned her attention back to her tea, not needing to ask how or why. The moment didn't require explanation. It simply was. Her thoughts wandered, gently now, without resistance. 2 small things. Her grandmother's kitchen window, always fogged when she made tea. Her father's laugh, rare but warm. A friend she hadn't spoken to in years, who once told her, half asleep on a train ride, that some places remember you, even when you forget them. In the booth behind her, the quiet conversation of strangers, carried like a lullaby, words she couldn't make out, but tones that soothed. Someone hummed near the fireplace. A cup was placed gently onto a saucer. Everything moved with purpose and softness. Time didn't seem to apply here in the same way. It folded and stretched like fabric in the rain. Mira finished her tea. The last sip tasted slightly different, more floral than she remembered, as if it were blending now with something new. She didn't feel alone. Not in the physical sense, there were others here, but in the deeper sense. The ache that often clung to the edges of her quiet life, that ache had softened, dissolved. Still, even in this warmth, something stirred beneath the surface. Not urgency, not discomfort, but a gentle awareness. A feeling that the story wasn't finished, that another door waited somewhere deeper in the café. She sat back, breathing in the soft light, letting the thought take shape, and yet something still felt unfinished. Mira rose from her chair slowly, leaving the empty cup on the table. The The fire crackled beside her, and the music continued to thread through the air like a soft stream, flowing gently but pulling her forward. She felt no hurry, yet her feet carried her toward the back of the café, as if drawn by something quieter than sound. Past the bookshelves and velvet chairs, beyond the curtain of soft golden beads that divided the main room from what lay behind. She stepped into a hallway lit by hanging glass lanterns, each glowing with its own subtle hue: amber, rose, pale green, deep indigo. The walls here were lined not with paintings or photographs, but with delicate paper lanterns, their thin skins painted with fragments of dreams, a sleeping fox in a field of stars, a boat made of petals adrift in a sky-colored sea, a woman holding a key as tall as herself. As Mira passed, one lantern flickered more brightly than the rest, and the image on its surface shifted. For just a second, she thought she saw herself standing in the rain, looking up at a sky that seemed to breathe. She moved on, and the hallway opened into a garden room, though there were no walls to define it. It was as if she had stepped outside, yet the rain did not fall here. Instead, mist curled around the edges of wide stone steps that led into a space filled with soft, glowing flowers and strange trees that shimmered with silver leaves. Above, the sky was midnight blue, studded with stars that blinked and moved gently, as if dreaming themselves. A woman stood in the center of the garden, her back to Mira. She wore a dress the color of moonlight, and her hair was long and dark, cascading like water. Without turning, she spoke. "You've come farther than most," the woman said. Mira didn't respond right away. She stepped closer, feeling the grass beneath her shoes, though she had never left the café. "What is this place?" she asked quietly. The woman turned then, and her eyes were gentle, filled with the kind of sadness that was not heavy, but ancient and kind. "Some call it a memory, others call it a mirror. But really, it's just the part of the café that listens the most closely." Mira nodded, as if that made perfect sense. The woman held something in her hand, a letter, folded neatly, sealed with wax. "It's for you," she said, offering it. Mira took the letter and stared at it for a long moment. She knew the handwriting on the front. It was her own. She opened it slowly. Inside were not words, but symbols, half-faded drawings, pieces of dreams she recognized but couldn't explain. A train window with her reflection, a scarf caught in wind, a chair at a table for two, always waiting. It didn't frighten her. It simply felt true, as if something long buried had chosen this place to rise again. The garden glowed softly around her. Fireflies blinked near the base of a tree that bore no fruit, only bells made of glass. One chimed softly, a note so delicate, it felt like it landed on her skin rather than her ears. Mira folded the letter and held it to her chest. She did not speak. The woman in the moonlight smiled, then turned and began to walk toward the mist. Mira followed, not to chase, but to understand. Nothing was urgent here, but everything mattered. The stars above shifted slightly, and the sky seemed to open just a little more. Mira walked through the mist, the letter still held close to her chest, her breath steady, her steps quiet on the soft earth beneath her. The garden did not end so much as dissolve, its edges blurring into a kind of dreamscape that felt both vast and gently contained. As she moved forward, the trees thinned, the air grew cooler, and she came upon a small clearing lit by a single hanging lantern. Beneath it sat a stone bench, and beside the bench a mirror rested against the trunk of a pale tree. It wasn't a mirror in the ordinary sense. Its surface shimmered like water, and when she approached, she did not see her reflection, at least, not at first. Instead, she saw moments, her childhood bedroom on a quiet afternoon, her hands pouring tea in silence, a letter she had written but never sent, the look in her eyes after a long day when the world had taken more than it gave. These images passed without judgment. They simply moved, soft and slow, like clouds. Then she saw herself as she was now, standing before the mirror, older, quieter, but somehow fuller, not more complete, but more real. The letter in her hand began to warm, and she unfolded it once more. This time there were words. You have not forgotten, you have simply been quiet, and in that quiet, nothing was lost. It was only waiting. Mira read the words again. They echoed softly, as though whispered into her thoughts. She didn't cry. The feeling was gentler than that, a kind of loosening in her chest. A breath she hadn't known she was holding, finally released. She sat on the bench and let the stillness hold her. She thought of the way she had moved through the world, carefully, tenderly, always listening for something just beyond reach. And here, in this impossible garden, she understood. It was never about reaching. It was about remembering that she had already arrived, that the ache she carried was not a flaw, but a reminder of her capacity to feel, to long, to wonder. A soft wind moved through the leaves above her. She closed her eyes. She could hear the café again, just faintly, the sound of cups being set down, the soft murmur of conversation, the warm thread of music returning. She rose from the bench, folded the letter one last time, and tucked it into the pocket of her coat as she stepped back through the mist. The trees welcomed her without a sound. The stars above pulsed gently, and the mirror faded behind her, its task complete. When she returned to the hallway, the lanterns still glowed. The café awaited, unchanged, as if no time had passed at all. But Mira had changed. She walked more fully now, with something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. A quiet clarity, a trust in the path, even when it disappeared behind fog. She did not need to ask what would come next. She only needed to follow it. The café greeted her as though she had never left. The fire still glowed in its hearth, the tables still flickered with candlelight, and the quiet murmur of conversation drifted like mist through the air. Yet something had shifted. Mira could feel it in her bones, as if the very rhythm of the space had slowed to match the cadence of her breath. She returned to her seat, but did not sit. Her hands brushed the velvet of the chair as she stood in stillness, listening. The music had changed. The soft jazz had faded into something more elusive, a melody with no clear source. It was not coming from the record player. It rose from the very air, a gentle, wandering tune that floated just above hearing. It was impossibly delicate, like a memory hummed in sleep. Mira turned her head and realized the sound was coming from the ceiling. She tilted her gaze upward. Above her, where once there had only been wooden beams, the roof had vanished. In its place was a wide expanse of sky, not the gray night outside the café, but a velvety dream sky, pulsing with indigo light. Stars drifted slowly across it, not fixed in constellations, but moving as if guided by the music itself. Then, something extraordinary. A violin hovered just beneath the stars, suspended in the sky, its bow moving of its own accord. The notes it played were not quite music, not quite memory. Each one shimmered visibly in the air, glowing before dissolving like breath on glass. She watched, spellbound. A soft sound stirred at her feet. Mira looked down to find a cat, long and lean, with fur like midnight and eyes that shimmered silver. It gazed up at her as if it had been waiting, then leaped lightly into the chair she had touched and curled there, purring. The sound of its purr echoed the rhythm of the violin above. As though they were connected, the café had become something new, or perhaps revealed more of what it had always been. Around her, the patrons remained still, peaceful, part of the dream. A man lifted his teacup without looking at the sky. A woman traced a finger along the spine of a book, as if reading by touch alone. No one seemed surprised. Mira, too, felt no fear, only wonder. The walls shimmered faintly. The bookshelves flickered like reflections in a stream. The music folded inward, and Mira closed her eyes just for a moment. When she opened them, the violin was gone. The ceiling had returned. The cat had vanished, leaving only a warm indentation on the velvet cushion. The world was quietly righting itself, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. But Mira knew better. A part of her had entered that music. A part of her now drifted with those stars. She did not need to understand it. She did not want to explain it. Some moments are not meant to be held in the hand, only felt as they passed through you. And so she stood, quiet and steady, as the café settled back into its gentle rhythm. Somewhere a bell chimed. Mira stepped away from the chair and toward the front of the café. The music had returned to its earlier softness, a piano tune folding in on itself like falling leaves. The scent of her earlier tea still lingered in the air, mingling now with something new, rosemary, perhaps, or sage. She passed the tables slowly, nodding gently to the other guests. Though few looked up, it didn't matter. The connections had already been made, subtle and lasting. Like threads tied in dreams, the host stood behind the counter, waiting. He smiled as she approached, not in farewell, but with quiet recognition, as if seeing someone who had completed something essential. His hands rested calmly on the polished wood. The same record from earlier now spun silently behind him, the needle still moving, though no sound came. "Did you find what you needed?" he asked. Mira didn't answer right away. She looked around the room one last time, the flickering lanterns, the delicate teacups. Everything had returned to what it had been, and yet she felt entirely different. The answer formed not in words, but in the way her body stood lighter, more certain. "Yes," she said softly, "though I didn't know I was looking." The host gave a slow nod, his expression unreadable but kind. "That's how it is here," he said. "The café offers what you're ready to find." Mira looked down at her hands. They felt warm, steady. The letter she had carried earlier was no longer in her pocket, but its message remained with her, imprinted in something deeper than memory. A quiet truth no longer hidden. Outside, the rain had stopped. She hadn't noticed it until now. The café's windows shimmered with leftover droplets, catching the light like tiny stars. The world beyond looked new, as if washed clean. The host stepped to the door and opened it for her. Cool air drifted in, tinged with petrichor and early morning stillness. Mira stepped outside and stood on the threshold for a moment. The alley was just an alley, again narrow, ordinary, damp. But the warmth of the cafe still held to her skin like a second breath. She turned back, half expecting the doorway to vanish, but it remained for one long, quiet heartbeat. Then the host gave a small bow, and the door closed gently behind him. When she blinked, the sign above had faded. Only the sound of dripping water remained. Mira stood in the empty street, the morning beginning to rise beyond the rooftops. The umbrella in her hand felt lighter. She walked slowly, her footsteps quiet on the damp pavement, the city around her beginning to stir. But something had changed. The ache she'd carried for so long was no longer heavy. It had settled somewhere inside her, transformed not into something gone, but something understood. She had gone far, but all she needed was already inside her. The sky was beginning to pale, touched at the edges by the first light of morning, though the stars still lingered faintly, reluctant to leave. Mira walked with slow, steady steps, her green umbrella folded gently at her side. The streets were nearly empty, just the occasional whisper of wind, the soft splash of water as her shoes touched puddles, the hush that only comes after rain. Everything felt hushed, softened, as if the city itself was still dreaming. Her breath moved in rhythm with her footsteps, calm, even unhurried. She felt the deep quiet of the café still within her, like a lantern lit in the center of her chest. Each inhale brought the scent of wet earth and stone, and with each exhale she let go of what no longer needed carrying. Her body was loose, relaxed, almost floating. She passed familiar landmarks, the iron gate near the corner bookstore, the ivy-covered wall beside the quiet museum. But now they felt different, more distant somehow, as though she were seeing them from a dream slowly fading into mist. A gentle warmth traced her spine, not from the air, but from within. The magic of the café hadn't left her. It had only shifted, settled, become part of her, above her. Clouds drifted lazily across the sky, silver and soft, like slow waves. She imagined herself lying among them, rocking gently. The world beneath was smaller now, quieter. Her thoughts had thinned to whispers. No more questions, no more searching, just the steady rhythm of peace. The wind brushed her hair, and she closed her eyes, letting the moment stretch. Time felt loose again, unbound. With her eyes closed, she could still hear the soft clink of cups, the murmured voices, the sound of a chair being drawn across a wooden floor. The café was behind her, yes, but not lost. It was part of the quiet now, tucked gently beneath her skin, like a melody she could hum if she ever needed to return. "You are safe," the world whispered. "You are light. You can rest now." The rhythm of her breath grew slower still, her limbs heavier. The hush around her deepened until even the distant sounds of waking life fell away. The café, the rain, the tea, the letteret, all folded together into a single weightless memory. She walked without moving, floated without thought, and in the soft cradle of silence, she began to drift. You can let go now. You are held. You are home. The city lay still beneath the brightening sky, the last of the stars retreating like lanterns, dimming one by one. Mira stood for a moment at the edge of the street where her walk had begun, though it felt as if lifetimes had passed. The umbrella hung loose in her hand now, its fabric damp and quiet. Somewhere far behind her, the door to the café had vanished, folded back into the rain-soaked brick, as though it had never been there at all. but she carried its warmth. She turned her face upward. The clouds were softening, streaks of early light drifting through them like silk in water. A hush settled in her bones. Not emptiness, but stillness, the kind that comes after the last note of a song, when the silence itself holds the echo. Mira closed her eyes. She breathed in once more, slow and full, and as she exhaled, the world seemed to pause with her, as if listening. No footsteps now, no voices, only the hush, only the soft breath of morning cradling her gently. Somewhere, unseen, a bell gave one final chime, a sound that was not heard with the ears, but felt in the quiet space between heartbeats. Then nothing. No need to move, no need to think. The story had ended, and everything was at rest. The café remained not on any map, not behind any door, but within: stillness, silence, sleep.